Effective project planning is critical to project success. Maybe you're not too sure how to go about doing it in a way that's really going to unfold properly so that you feel confident in your project. Fear not, because I'm going to go in depth into really good project planning techniques. Gather your critical project information. Before you even can kick anything off, you really have to get settled with what is it that you're going to do. You need to really fine-tune the scope statement. You need to ensure that you understand what the priority matrix is. You want to get baseline of how this project is going to unfold. You're going to want to write your charter. This is going to be the document that you and your team and steering committee are going to be looking at, particularly in the front half of the project, heavily. But you also need to not only do the charter, you need to do a work breakdown structure of what are all the high-level bucket items that your project needs. And this is really important because it's going to ensure that you're looking at everything from start to finish. It's also going to help you unfold who do you need on your project from a resource perspective. It's also going to give some insight for your timeline too. Now, if you're wondering, work breakdown structure, I haven't heard of that, Adriana. Don't worry, I have you covered. If you go to the YouTube search bar and you look and you write in Adriana Girdler work breakdown structure, I have some videos on that subject, which gives more in-depth information around that. Since you're here learning about effective project planning techniques, you are going to want to ensure you get this amazing cheat sheet that I have that is going to share with you how to avoid common project mistakes. How do you get it? The link is below this video. Getting the right support. This is the time right now when you're in project planning that you need to ensure you have the right support. So you need to ensure, do you have your executive support? Do you have your sponsor? Do you have your steering committee team members? Do you have your vendors, third-party suppliers that maybe you need to bring on? Is there a consultant that has to come on? Who on your team internally needs to be invited and ask permission-wise, can they support the project? This is critical. I've seen too many projects where people have moved forward without having the right support or understanding what the right support is. And then when push comes to shove and they actually need those people, it either delays the project or increases costs, or worse yet, they have to drop something because they don't have the resources in order to get what's needed done. Plan a successful kickoff meeting. All right, I say this over and over because I think it's really important that people realize this. When you're given your project marching orders, do not do your kickoff meeting because there's all this planning that you have to do. These are planning techniques that I'm teaching you right now that's critical. Your kickoff meeting, yes, is part of planning, but it's at the end. So that's why you need to do your charter and your WBS, and do you have the right resources? Because it's all leading up to you getting everything that you need in order to do your kickoff. Now, interestingly enough, a kickoff session meeting is not an hour or two. I usually, in my kickoffs, have them to be a half-day session, even a full-day session. Why? Because I make it a working session. It's not just reviewing with my team the charter and the marching orders and what it is that they need to do. I then go into a workshop type setting where they then, with the original WBS that I've broken down, they then expand upon it, really leading to the project plan. They provide me their subject matter expertise in order to ensure that we have everything we need, which allows for us literally the next day to really go in depth starting the project activities. And the nice thing is, for those of my students, and if you're interested in, I lay that all out in my Slay a Project Management online course. The templates on how to do the exercises, the flow, everything, because this is so important. I've seen too many projects fail here because they didn't set it up correctly. Finalize your project schedule. All right, this actually will be really easy. What, Adriana? Project schedules are really hard. They are when you're like, oh, let me get the wind in the air, where's the direction blowing? But because you're following the stages and the steps that I'm talking about in this video, how to do really effective project management planning, then at your kickoff meeting, remember, it's not just a 1 hour session, it's either a half day or full day workshop. You're building out your WBS, your work breakdown structure, and you're actually creating detailed tasks with your team members. Those detailed tasks have associated responsibility and due date. Boom, instant schedule. So You take all that information and you now create a schedule. Now there's a couple of ways you can create a schedule. In fact, I always say don't just have one type of schedule. You're going to have a multitude of different types of schedules. You're going to have an overarching summary schedule, which is kind of like a high-level milestone, and you want to make it in a pictorial representation, which looks kind of similar to a Gantt chart. You also want a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart's going to have a lot of the detail, and you're going to see all the dependencies around it. You also are going to want to have a task table. That task table is really your WBS action plan, which is going to have associated due dates and responsibilities to those tasks. And sometimes calendar format is going to be really helpful at certain parts in the project. By the way, I would never recommend doing a calendar format for the entirety of the project, but there are going to be certain points in time where you have a lot of activities happening, and there's something visually about a calendar format that you can see weekends, activities, the overlapping, which becomes really helpful, particularly when there's a lot going on. I tend to kind of go in maybe 3, 4, 6 weeks of that, just so I can really see that information. But your schedule is going to be the next big thing that you have to plan out. Big caveat, it's a baseline. So just because you create your schedule doesn't mean it's going to be locked down. It just means here's what we've agreed to, what we know as of today, here's a schedule. And now you're going to project management against that. So if things go outside of that schedule, well, then that's where you start using the techniques later on in your project with monitoring and controlling. But in the planning stage, you need the baseline. Just like you need your tactical tasks, you need to have an understanding of what that overall schedule is as well. Okay, effective project planning technique that gets missed all the time, which is important, it's your risk plan. What are you going to do with risks? So many times we forget about this. So there's a couple of things that I do in the planning section. Because you did your charter, and what I teach in Slay Project Management, my students do, is there are some initial risks that you can call out at the beginning of the project. So you take those initial risks and you build out mitigation plans and contingency plans against them. Because it's going to become really important that you have an idea and a way of working of how you're going to deal with risks. Because I promise you, there is not a project that I ever worked on that a risk did not come to fruition. There's always something that pops up. So you can't pretend that it doesn't. And so when you understand that, okay, it's not just, hey, what's a risk? What are we going to do? You want to mitigate it as well. So how can I ensure that this risk doesn't come to fruition? But if it does, how am I going to deal with it? Which is the contingency plan. So definitely setting up a good risk management plan with your initial risks. And by the way, just like the WBS and the schedule, it's a live document. You're going to want to further on in the project reevaluate your risks because you're probably going to have more information as well. Develop an initial change management plan. So change management, what is change management? It's the change that is going to happen to those who are going to be experiencing the deliverable of the project. And that type of change is going to be revolving around documentation, training, sustainment practices. So all of that stuff that you really need to ensure that you're on top of. This gets missed a lot. People don't think of a change management plan, but let's be honest. Whatever we're working on from a deliverable standpoint from a project impacts somebody, and it's a change for them. And so it could be a change in a way of working. It could be a change in an addition to more activities, or maybe a subtraction of activities that they were supposed to do. But the thing here is we have to take that into account from the get-go at the beginning of the project, because you may have to create some additional things that you didn't plan for because you were only focusing on the deliverable, not the impact to the end user of the change. Change is never easy, but you have to plan for it and you have to put the right things in place. And it's a very critical part of your planning process. Okay, now that you know the effective project planning techniques, what I said earlier on, you want to get this. It's only going to help you. And how do you get it? The link is underneath this video. Want to learn how to be even a more effective project manager? Watch this next video. On that note, if you found the content in this video helpful, please give it a like, drop us a comment as well. And on that note, I would love it if you join this community. We will see you at the next video.